Adam.
It's a little bit warm. Adam. Okay.
All right, we are live streaming on YouTube and starting recording and admit all.
I changed her thing so we.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Elizabeth Lyons Elementary School community presentation for the new school that is being proposed. We hope that you find this session informative. We will be taking questions and answering questions at the end of the presentation. We ask that you hold your questions until the end in the hopes that we'll answer your questions as we go through the presentation. But of course, if there are additional questions, we welcome that, and we really encourage people to ask questions so that we can get the answers out there. This presentation is being done for all of you so that you are well informed on the status of the project here. Next slide, please. The presentation will be on the website. You can also submit questions or comments after, and this will stay up on the website for 2 weeks. So please use the link that's highlighted in yellow on the screen and present any questions if they come up after this presentation is over, or if in the future when you're speaking with your friends and neighbors in the community. Please, the only way that we make this entire project a success is with your input. So we encourage you to please present questions, comments, so that we can review those and get the information out to all of you. Next slide, please. I'm not going to read through all the names on this list. I'm sure those of you that are familiar with the community know all of the members on the building committee. We have several of the building committee members here present with us today. Some of them will be speaking, some will not. But just to name a few, we do have the chair and vice chair, and of course, the superintendent who will be part of this presentation. Thank you. Superintendent, no, she should be familiar to every one of you. Tia Stovall and Brian Howard, the town manager, who unfortunately is not able to be with us today. He is not feeling well, and we wish him well. Next slide. Myself, I'm Tom Gazunas. I'm the owner's project manager for the project. What that means is we represent the community. We help you to get through the MSBA process, the public information process, the community funding process, and help to facilitate all of that. And then once we're successful and get into construction, we will be there through the entire construction process as well, along with, of course, the building committee and your architect, Randall Luther, who will be a presenter. And I'm going to allow the presenters to each speak a little bit when they have that opportunity to start their presentation. Randall has his team with him as well, that it will be available to answer questions if that comes up and if it is necessary. Next slide. So MSBA. I mentioned the MSBA, and I did that in an acronym, and I apologize for that. It is the Massachusetts School Building Authority. The MSBA, and I will refer to them as the MSBA because the Massachusetts School Building Authority is just a mouthful moving forward. They are a tremendous resource to the Commonwealth and to all of the school districts. They provide funding. In the case of Randall, they're providing approximately 57% of the cost of the project. And we say the anticipated reimbursement rate, the anticipated effective rate, because there is a higher rate, but to not confuse people, it's really all about what amount of money at the end of the day will the community be getting from the MSBA. Go back one, Christine, I'm sorry. And for purposes of all the discussions moving forward, The number to really focus on is that 57%. So we'll be getting back 57 cents on every dollar that is spent on the project. Um, there's a ProPay system, which is what is used by the MSBA, and that's really just the accounting and the funding mechanisms to get the reimbursements back. If people have specific questions about that, I can go into it in detail, but I really don't want to bore you with those details at this point. Just know that there is a really well-defined, tried, tested, and true process to get that reimbursement back. And it does come back on a monthly basis as dollars are expended. And oversight. The MSBA Board of Directors, they have a facilities assessment subcommittee. Their project manager works with the school building committee, works with us as the OPM, owner's project manager, works with Randall and his team as the design architect and all of their sub-consultants. This is a true collaborative team effort and approach. Next slide. And just quickly to give a recap of where we are. Project started back in May of 2020 and has moved forward in the various phases. Presentation to town council was back in September. An interactive public process and presentation was made in October, all of 2020. In November and December, there were additional presentations to the school committee and town council. Town council voted on December 14th to accept the Divine location. That is the site where it has been determined the new school will go. That decision has been made. On February 24th, there was the preferred schematic report was submitted to the MSBA. It's one of their required submissions. In March, today, here we are on St. Patrick's Day. And I should have said, Happy St. Patrick's Day to everyone. I apologize for not starting out that way. But here we are today with the community presentation to all of you. And outreach and to the community will continue. This is not where it ends. This is kind of one of the starting points where we continue with public information, public outreach, public answering the public's questions as we move through the entire process. And Thea, next slide, I'll give it to you.
Thank you, and welcome to everyone from the community who's tuning in today. I want to just remind everyone of our vision here in Randolph, which is to, with the support of a proud community, engage all of our individuals in a respectful, caring, and equitable environment to become lifelong learners who are innovative and collaborative leaders of a global society. And I think that's important to talk about because as we talk about the new building, we've really taken our vision in stride and really figured out how can we create a building and put academic instruction in place that really helps students reach that point and also support our teachers in doing that work as well. Our mission is that that all of our students have a creative, problem solving and social emotional environment that builds their skills for career and college readiness or whatever it is that they choose to do outside of school. So we'll talk a little bit about that as well. Some of the goals that we've thought about as we looked at the design of a new elementary school in Randolph was how can we increase engagement and collaboration for kids and really get them to think about the work that they do, create a curriculum that is challenging, that encourages risk-taking, that produces perseverance and really allows students to grapple with their understanding so that they can seek answers on their own versus sort of relying on someone to feed those answers to them. Also, with all of the new expectations around what students are doing, how do we support our staff and give them the resources that are needed so that they are able to do what we're asking them to do in such a creative and innovative way? And then the ultimate goal of all of this is that our students are really taking the ownership of their learning, that they understand that everything that they are doing is so that they can be these global citizens that we want to see, and that they are able to be put in almost any situation and be able to sort of think their way out of it and find solutions to problems that exist for them or are put in front of them, and that they can use all of the content and the skills that they've learned to solve and to hopefully produce better ideas, innovative ideas that would benefit the community and the greater nation as a whole. Next slide, please. I'm going to talk a little bit. So right now, the MSBA has approved enrollment at the Lyons School to go to 315 students. We're pretty close there now, but the amount of space that we would have would be unbelievable, as well as 90 full-time equivalencies for the pre-K. And as some of you may know, the pre-K has some students do full day, some students do half day. So we figured out what the full equivalency would be, but this would actually allow us to take in more students and get kids off the waiting list who really need an earlier start in school. I'm going to ask our Assistant Superintendent, Amy Hartley-Madison, who handles curriculum and instruction, to speak about our teaching methodology and schedules as we move forward.
Sure. Thank you so much, Ms. Stovall. So we're very excited about this opportunity to shift our instruction, our teaching and learning for the district. And we're, utilizing this project as a way to really sort of breathe wind into this movement we want to make across the district. And we're really looking to focus on 21st century skill in learning and a learning approach pre-K to 12 in the district. And we feel like this new building is going to just be the pinnacle of those 21st century skills and really allow us to operate in a whole child 21st century approach. And when we're talking about those skills, we're really thinking about critical thinking, communication, collaboration, and creative problem solving. And those are going to be the things that we're really going to focus on as we approach teaching and learning and instruction. As a district, we're really focusing on deeper learning. And we're really thinking about what it means to engage at a deeper level, both as educators and as students, what it means to have connection in our learning, so that we're not learning in silos of experiences, but we're learning in a connected way. And so that our learning produces application in a way that's meaningful and engaging for students. And so one of the big pieces that we're going to be looking at is project-based learning as we move forward in the district. And this idea that our students are producing application and that they're immersed in learning in a connected way. And so some of the small steps we're really taking right now is thinking about how to begin this professional development of our educators to understand what project-based learning is, the 21st century skills application, and how all of our learning experiences feed towards that for our students. And this is a process for us, and we don't want to jump in and move too fast. We want it to be deep learning for our educators as well. So we're starting to think about our specialist schedules. Our specialists are very much the specialists that I had as a child. So we have art, we have music, we have PE, or we do traditionally. This year we've had to shift some of that. And we have at the elementary level science and social studies as specialist areas, which is a little bit unique for elementary schools. And so one of the ways that we're diving into this work and really thinking about shifting this is to look at those spots as opportunities and how, what kind of experiences can we offer in our specialist categories that leads itself to this engaging, connected learning experience that has 21st century skills weaved throughout and really is that project-based learning approach. Engagement is something that we're really trying to think about, engagement of our adults and our students, so that when we're in the school, we are alive with excitement and energy about what we're learning and we feel that natural connection. So those are the big pieces about the teaching and learning, the move instructionally, and how our schedules and our specialists, we're really looking to start that even sooner than this building project, so that when the building comes to fruition, we are ready as adults to be ready for our students to provide this kind of a learning experience.
Thank you, Amy.
Good afternoon. My name is Randall Luther. I'm a partner with TSKP Studio, and I'm going to sort of take you through where we are today. When we were engaged, the first step in the process for us working for the district, for the town of Randolph, and for the MSBA is to do an examination, to do a feasibility study, which consists of an examination of the existing building to determine what condition it's in, and then to also look at potential alternative sites that might be appropriate for this particular project. Next. So we began by looking at your existing Lyons School. The building was built in 1957. It's had very few changes since it was originally constructed. One of the few things that has happened is close to 30 years ago, there were some roof replacements done, but those roofs are now coming up on 30 years old. They're 20-year roofs, so they're beyond their useful life, and there's a roof replacement in your future if the school were to remain in use. But probably the bigger issue that we identified in our examination of the building is the existing mechanical, electrical, and plumbing systems. With some minor exceptions, essentially all the systems that are there are original to the building. So they're 60 plus years old. At best, they're about 30-year-old. They're designed to last about 30 years. So you're well beyond their expected life expectancy. At the moment, I know in some cases the district has to get replacement parts on eBay because they're no longer available. So it's a real challenge to keep the school operating properly. And certainly as you look forward at a 21st century school, there would need to be significant upgrades to all of those systems to make the building useful. Also, the building's not sprinklered. That's a fundamental life safety system that is in all schools today, and is something you clearly would want to consider, again, moving forward. Next. So some of the other concerns with the building have to do just with the amount of available space and how it's laid out. The building's about 38,000 square feet. To accommodate your anticipated enrollment, which as the superintendent mentioned is right around 315 right now, you need about 40 to 50% more space than you currently have. And that's to deliver the curriculum as it's currently envisioned. And as evidence of that, if you were to look up to the top of this floor plan of the existing building, you'll see this area that's been circled in red at the top. And then in the lower right-hand corner, you'll see a picture of that. That's a shot of the existing cafeteria, which used to have nice windows looking out to the outdoors. But in order to accommodate a lot of the pupil services spaces that are needed, they've had to carve out these sort of temporary offices in the end of the cafeteria. That was never anticipated that office spaces be there. In the center of the plan between the cafeteria and the gym, which has this other circle in the picture in the upper left, is what used to be the stage. It has been converted again to instructional space because there's insufficient space in the building. You can also see that it's up several steps, so it's not handicap accessible, which brings me to the next issue with the building, in that in 1957, handicap accessibility was not something that was a concern when the building was designed. Consequently, the site, the access to the building, the doors, the toilet rooms, all the cabinet and millwork and sinks were not designed with accessibility in mind. And so there's a fair amount of work necessary to make this building accessible to the overall community and to people in particular with disabilities. And then the last sort of major shortcoming of the building is the gymnasium, which is that circle in the bottom left of the plan. The gym is surrounded by 6 classrooms. And as you can imagine, when students are in PE, running around and being loud and working off of all that excess energy, which is exactly what you want them to do in PE, it's very disruptive to the classrooms that are immediately adjacent to that space. So that's a real challenge that would need to be overcome in any arrangement where the school continues as a school. Next. So at the same time that we were doing an investigation of the existing building, we were also looking at potential alternate sites in the town. And we had identified 5 prospects. The first was the old McNeil School, which also served as a senior center for a while in town. There's the Grove Street property, which I think is also referred to as sort of the dog park. There's the old Tower Hill School, the old Divine School, and then the current Lyons site. After some initial evaluation criteria, we went through and we were able to remove the Tower Hill, Grove Street, and McNeil School site from consideration for a variety of reasons. And we really ended up then just focusing on the old Divine School site and the Lyons site. Next. So as we started looking at those 2 sites, we decided we had to lay out the existing, we had to lay out the sites to show the layouts of the parking and the buildings, floor plans of the buildings to confirm that both sites were viable, that both sites would work. And then we would be able to estimate those options to see if there are any cost differences between the 2 sites. And that would allow you all, the town, to make an educated decision about which site made the most sense. Next. So as we looked at those 2 sites, there were really 3 options on the Lyons site and 1 on the Divine site that we investigated initially. So on the Lyons site, we looked at an addition and renovation to the existing building. We looked at building a new building right adjacent to the existing school. And then when the new building was done, the old school would be taken down. We also looked at building a new building in the same location as the existing school. So in that scenario, the children would have to be moved off site, the building would be taken down, and then we would build a new school. And then on the Divine site, we looked at putting a brand new building on that site, removing the existing building. So again, after our investigations and reviewing with the committee, it was decided to move forward with 1 option on Lyons, 1 option on Divine. The option at Lyons that we looked at in more detail was building a new building immediately adjacent to the existing school. And then the existing school would be torn down once the new building was done. And then the new building at the Divine site. Next. So with those 2 options, we had them estimated. The cost, well, actually, we had all the options estimated, but the cost between those particular options that we were focusing on were almost the same. They were within the margin of error of the estimates. So when we came forward to the town, we said that it's really not a financial decision because the costs are the same. It's really about what makes the most sense based on the variety of other criteria. So in November and December, as Mr. Katsunas mentioned, we went before the town bodies. We presented the 2 options, and at the end of December, the town council decided the Divine site made the most sense, and the school building committee and the school committee endorsed that decision, and that's where we are today. Next. So once we had a decision on where we were going, we were able to begin looking at what a school on the Divine site would look like in more detail. Now, as Mr. Katsunas mentioned earlier, we're really early in the process. We're just starting the design. We have some thoughts and some ideas that we're going to share with you, but we really encourage you to give us your thoughts on what we're doing, because what you tell us will ultimately shape the direction that the final design takes. So it's really important that you participate in this process. Next. So this is the site plan as it stands currently. So those of you who are familiar with the site, the current Divine School is close to Old Street, and Old Street is the street that runs up and down on the right side, straight up and down the page. To the right of that is North Main Street on an angle. The property itself is kind of a T-shape laid on its side, so that the frontage on Old Street is much narrower than we have on the left side of this property, which is the west side. There we have a lot more room. And in fact, if you look at the building footprint and imagine that being close to Old Street, you would see doesn't really fit. I mean, it takes up the entire parcel close to Old Street. And then we wouldn't have room for all the associated outdoor activities that are part of the school. So immediately we've kind of focused on moving the school further back to the left side of the parcel where there's more room to support all the activities associated with the school. And that leaves the right side, the east side along Old Street, available for the bulk of the parking. So we've accommodated almost all the parking that's required along Old Street. Now we understand with all the schools in Randolph, because pedestrian access is very important. So as pedestrians approach from Old Street and we have all this parking in the front, we wanted to provide a nice pedestrian-friendly way to get from Old Street to the main entrance to the school. So we have this sort of greenway that runs right through the middle of the parking spaces, through the parking lot, and divides it really into two parking lots. And that becomes a sort of pedestrian green mall that connects Old Street to the main entrance of the building. To the left now, where we have the main building, to the top, we have a multi-purpose soccer field. Multi-purpose field that could be used for soccer or for whatever purpose. We have a playground for the younger children. Around the back, we have service. And then as you move further south, there's paved play. And there's a playscape for older children, soft play. And then probably more importantly, the southern edge of the site is wooded. It's kind of contained. It's secluded. It's kind of a wonderful little area. So we think it's a great opportunity for us to create some outdoor learning spaces there. And in and amongst the trees, there's also a wetland in there, and we think that can be part of the educational experience. So we're really looking forward to developing the southern edge of that property as an educational opportunity. In the upper left-hand corner, you'll see it says New Street. And the intention there is, since Old Street is a one-way street heading south, we want to make sure that we have kind of an easy, convenient access to the north. So we're looking at having a street that goes out and connects to the north to Reed Street, right opposite Mitchell Street. Next. So this is a view of what the school would look like if you were kind of floating above North Main Street, looking across Old Street to where the new school would be. So you can see here, the Old Street comes in, and then there's that sort of pedestrian walk that would take you from Old Street right to what is the main entrance. And then you also see one of the principles, one of the ideas that we're trying to develop as part of this school, and that is the creation of a large front porch. In the southern end of Randolph, you have Stetson Hall, you have the Town Hall, and they both have these kind of wonderful front porches. And it's a very common feature in buildings all throughout New England. And we think it would be wonderful to kind of create a community front porch for the north end of Randolph and allow the building to kind of reach out and speak to the entire community, not just to the students who attend the school. Next. So I'll take you through the floor plans as they stand today. You see where it says main entry, that takes you into what is that front porch. Those columns, those dots are the columns of the porch. So most people would enter to the left, but then there's pre-K entrance to the right. I actually think of this building not as one school, but really as sort of 4 separate buildings that all surround a communal space in the middle. And that communal space is made up of the lobby, the gym, the stage, and the cafeteria. I almost think of that space as like a town green with smaller buildings that surround it. So you enter again that main entrance. The administration is immediately to the left, where it can kind of has good visibility of the site and the entrance. You arrive at the main lobby. Opposite the main lobby, there's the media center. It would be very transparent. You could see right into the media center. The gym is right off the lobby. As you head down the corridor along the back side, we have kindergarten classrooms. And then we have the kitchen and custodial. They have easy access to service in the back. And then you arrive at the cafeteria. Again, that sort of idea that that's part of that communal space. Off of that would be, say, the art and music spaces. And then to the lower right is the pre-K wing. And it's a sort of a standalone wing. It's almost autonomous, but it shares resources with the main building. So the students have their own little identity in the pre-K. Going back to the main lobby, there's a grand stair that takes you up to the 2nd floor. Next. As you arrive up on the second floor. The first thing you see is a roof terrace. And that terrace is immediately adjacent to what's labeled as STE. That's really kind of a science room. And that's consistent with the vision of the superintendent, assistant superintendent, that they start moving towards a more collaborative learning experience and project-based learning, so that that roof terrace becomes a wonderful, secure location for outdoor learning. They can set up raised planters. There's a unit they do on planting and plants and growing. Earth sciences, they can do weather experiments out there. Again, right off the science room, and featured as you come up the stairs to the second floor. It'll be the first thing you see is this outdoor student teaching space. And then the classrooms are organized just in a simple loop that wraps around, again, the kind of big communal space in the center, and they all look into that communal space, which again is the gym and the cafeteria. And then they have the support spaces, the TLC rooms and resource rooms, reading rooms, also on that level. The other thing you'll notice is the classrooms are in pairs, and they each share a small group instruction room. And again, in our conversations with the district, that's an important part of this collaborative learning process. They can do small groups in there. Aides can pull students out and work on one-on-one. And meanwhile, the students can kind of stay in their local community without having to move into another space. So it's a wonderful resource in terms of flexibility and how they teach. And then we're also indicating a few breakout spaces, again, where a small group could go out into the hallway, in a corner of the hallway, and have little collaborative sessions. Next. So this is kind of the view you would see as you came down Old Street and turned right into the property. This is the first thing you would see. This is a view of what the school might look like. Again, the most dominant thing, of course, is the large front porch idea right in the middle. The lower block to the right is that pre-K building. To the left, that two-story block is administration and some classrooms above. Next. This is a view of the building from the north, from that multi-purpose field, looking back at the school. Pre-K is in the foreground. It's a one-story block, and then over to the right, there's a two-story classroom block, and then in the distance in the far left, again, is the admin and some additional classrooms. And then kind of hovering above it all is the roof that covers that communal, that town square space right in the center, surrounded by these smaller buildings. Next. And this is what that lobby might look like as you enter. This is actually from the second floor, but you would come in at the lower level. Straight ahead is the media center that I talked about. Again, it's very open. In my mind, in fact, it might even be, say, roll-up glass doors so that the library space, media space could actually spill out into the lobby, and the lobby can serve an educational purpose. I could imagine, a book fair or something where tables are set up in the lobby and you move back and forth between the media center and the lobby. Immediately above the media center, up the kind of grand stair, is that outdoor terrace space right off the science room, again, where you'll be able to see experiments going on. And it's visible from the main lobby. So immediately when you enter that this is a little bit different than what has been business as usual. To the right is the gym. And then above it all, again, is that roof. We're trying to dematerialize the roof. We want it to be very open, very light, bright, a lot of access to views, to daylight. So again, it feels like you're in different little buildings looking out on this big community space in the middle of the building. Next. And then here's a picture of the cafeteria. Again, similar themes. It's bright, a strong connection to the outdoors, easy access to the play fields outside. Upper levels looking down into that community space. On the right, you can see actually the stage, which in this case is facing towards the cafeteria, but we can close off this side and then open up the other side, and the stage will then face the gymnasium. So depending on the size of the crowd that may be attending an event, it can either be a more intimate experience and the stage can face the cafeteria, or it could be a school-wide or town-wide assembly and it faces the gymnasium. So you have a lot of flexibility and how that stage works and how these two spaces, the gym and the cafeteria, work. Next. I think, Tom, you're taking it from here.
Yes, so thank you, Randall. Thank you for that very informative overview and discussion on the exterior and interior of the building. And to the town of Randolph, I hope you are all as excited about the project as we all are, we think it's really a beautiful building that has been designed, but still yet to be designed. Again, we want to hear your comments. We want your input. We want you to be part of this process. Next slide, please. So the costs, where are we? $1 million has already been allocated for the feasibility study. That's the phase that we are in today, right now. So that money has already been put forward. The estimated construction costs, and I have to say estimated because this is based on these preliminary drawings that you've seen to date and the site plans. But with our educated estimators, both on the OPM side and on the designer side, they've collaborated, and the total construction cost, the hard cost, the cost to build the building is $40,500,000. On top of that, we have the administrative costs, the OPM fees, the architect fees, the FF&E furniture, fixture, and equipment that would go into the building, and then other miscellaneous costs is $5,800,000. Then we have a contingency that's built in. Right now, again, we're in the early stages, so we need to have that contingency factor built in. That's $1,650,000. That brings us to a total project cost of $48,950,000. Again, I have to stress that this is an estimate based on the information that we have available to us all right now. Out of that, we look at that effective that I talked about earlier, MSBA reimbursement rate. So, what are we going to get back from the MSBA? And that 57%, that's a reimbursement of $27,800,000. That's what comes back to the community from the MSBA, leaving the town's share to be $21,150,000. Next slide. So project schedule, where are we? As I started the presentation on where we were from March of 2020 to today, March of 2021, we're finalizing those, or I shouldn't say finalized, we have submitted everything to the MSBA. They're in their review process. We have a meeting with them next week to present this plan to them, get their comments at their feasibility study phase. And then they continue their review as we continue going into the schematic design. That's the next phase of design that we would move forward with. It's a more refined level of design. Still not construction documents, but a more refined level. That brings us to the phase where we then have a much more detailed estimate that we can create, and we use that to then move forward with outreach to the community again, and ultimately going for town funding approval in November of 2021 through a town-wide vote. Assuming a successful vote, we would then execute an agreement, the project funding agreement with the MSBA, and that locks us in to then move forward with construction. Next slide. Again, I'm going to stress, I think I've said it a few times here and we put it up on the chat. We want to get your input. All of this information will be provided on the website. There's also an email address. It's the lionsbuildingproject@gmail.com that you can send comments to the building committee. But there's also that email address where we want to hear from you on all of your questions or comments. Please submit them. That concludes the formal presentation that we had prepared for you. We really now want to hear, I'm saying really, and I really, really, really mean we really want to hear your questions, comments. So we'd like to open it up. Adam, if you could do that.
All right, if anybody has a question, would like to come forward, feel free to unmute yourself, ask your question.
I have a question. My name is Cindy, and first of all, the building looks beautiful. It's absolutely magnificent. And my question is, on the new road in the back of the property that you said leads out to Reed Street. So my street, Flintlock Road, will that lead into the new road, and will there be access from the new road to leave off of Flintlock Road, or will it just be out to Reed Street?
So yes, Flintlock Road will connect. There's actually on the street next to you, to the left, to the west, there's another street that runs parallel to Flintlock. It escapes me at the moment. And at the end of that is called Dow Street.
Yes. Yep.
Dow Street would extend across. It would connect to Flintlock, and it would extend to the corner of the property. So Flintlock would in fact be connected. And then off of Dow, there's actually, the town owns the rights to a street that goes straight out and connects to Reed, right opposite Mitchell. Right now, there's no road there, but they own the right of way. So we would in fact make that connection.
Randall, do you want the site plan up for reference?
Yeah, you can. It's kind of off the site plan, but at least we can take a look.
That one, yep.
Yeah, so this comes along, and then Dow Street is exactly aligned with this new street, so it'll connect right into that. And then as you're heading west on this new street or Dow, there'll be a right turn that'll go right opposite Mitchell Street, and that connects into Reed.
Okay, so somebody could come down Flintlock Road and take a right onto the new street to get into the property. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
In fact,
And vice versa, they could go down the new street and take a left onto Flintlock to get out to Canton Street.
yes. We actually imagine that quite a few walkers will end up coming in this back corner from the entire neighborhood to the west. They'll come in through this way alongside. So there'll be sidewalks, connecting to the property.
Okay, thank you.
Next question.
I think there were a bunch of questions in the sort of the chat. Maybe Tom, you could go through them, or somebody can we can just read them out, and then we can see who's best to answer them.
Sure.
No,
The first question is, if the town vetoes the Divine site, will the Lyons site still be considered?
So veto, we assume that means that if it's unsuccessful, when the town goes for funding in November, if it fails, can you consider the Lyons site? If it fails, you will be removed from consideration in the MSBA process. So you would be out of their funding cycle, and you would have to reapply as a new project to the MSBA. So it's not impossible, but it would probably push the project out 3 or 4 years. The other thing I will say is that the MSBA takes a dim view, quite frankly, of projects that are not approved. They invest a lot of their energy, a lot of their money. And so when projects don't go ahead, they're very nervous about re-engaging with that community. And so they're going to want some assurances that the next time around, it goes through.
Randall, if I can just add, I think it would actually be longer than 3 or 4 years, because in our experience, when a community declines to move forward with the project, it then moves the community to the bottom of the list, and you then have to start. So depending on how many other communities are in the queue, the community would go to that bottom and then move up. So it's closer to 6 to 8 to 10 years by the time you come around.
I'll read the next one. It's has the town council school committee put thought into our walking students' safety? The sidewalk ends for a bit on North Main Street. Students will have to cross Route 28 twice to avoid walking in the street. Also, is there a plan to enforce crosswalk laws from the traffic? I watched 4 cars speed up to run the red light at the intersection of Reed Street and Pond Street this morning.
I can say that it was something that I know the school committee and the school building committee looked at and were very concerned about, and the town council also asked us some questions about that. There will be some redistricting associated with this project. And in looking at that, one of the criteria that we looked at was how many people are crossing North Main Street, whether the building stays at its current location or whether it moves to the Divine site. And because the current and projected catchment areas for the Lyons School straddles Main Street, in any scenario, you're going to have students cross one way or the other. So it is something that everyone's very cognizant of, and there was a fair amount of discussion as we continue forward on how that's addressed, and whether there crossing guards and whether there may be additional signaling that's required. I don't know that anyone has all the answers for that today, but it is certainly something that has been considered and will continue to be an important factor as we're working through how to move students towards this new location.
I also want to add that there would be, of course, meetings with the Public Safety Committee to address concerns like this and make sure that all of those were met to their satisfaction as a minimum.
All right, I'll move on to the next one. Still very confused why the town and school committee doesn't feel this plan can happen at the existing Lyons school.
Well, that's one would be great for Brian, who is not feeling well today. I mean, I don't want to speak for everyone in the council or the committee. I will say that it was a hard decision, but in totality, when they evaluated all the different issues that weigh into where you put a school, they felt that the Divine site was preferable to the Lyons site. That's not to say that you couldn't do a project on the Lyons site. You can. We laid one out, but as they weighed the various factors, they came out on the side of the Divine site.
Also, one of the factors that, of course, goes into that when you're building on a site that is remote and distinct and different from an existing school site, you're not mixing construction activities with young students and children. It's a complete and clear separation. There is not that disruption for the teaching and learning. Students will then be able to move into a brand new building that is fully complete, including all of the sidewalks, all the pavement. There's no temporary moving around, and you don't have buses and students crossing with construction activities. Yes, they can be segregated, but there is still always that disruption that takes place when you're building an addition to a building or even a new building adjacent on the same site.
All right, I'll move on to the next one. How will the town deal with traffic and parking issues at the new Divine?
Well, I mean, I briefly touched on the connection to the north. That suggestion came from the town planner in her concerns about traffic and allowing freer northbound traffic. There was a school clearly on the Divine property historically, so it's not a different usage. It's not a terribly large school, 315 students. So it won't put an enormous burden on Old Street. I mean, there will be some additional analysis that we talked about, in terms of pedestrian crossing and other sort of traffic related issues. But at this point, it does not seem like there should be any significant challenge that we can't easily overcome with this site.
All right, then our next question looks like it was the same one that Cindy asked verbally and received an answer to, so I'm going to hop down. How will the town come up with $21 million when they can't currently afford gym teachers or social workers?
I can answer that. The issue right now is not about affording gym teachers and social workers. It was about schools looking differently this year. And we, quite frankly, have not had a huge need for those positions because of the nature of school this year. So I think the two are two very different issues. We did not eliminate gym or social workers because of money. We did it based on the programming and the structure of our schools this year.
Okay, next question is the current school is also set up to have roughly 2 classrooms per grade level, which has caused a lot of overcrowding as student populations shift. What flexibility is there in the classroom layout?
So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10.
Christina, put up slide 20 and 21.
Yeah, probably the next one. So based on the enrollment, we actually have more classrooms than 2 per grade. You have two extra classrooms. So that will allow, if you have one year where you have a particular, an enrollment bubble comes through in the 2nd grade, that's where those additional, you can grab one of those additional classrooms for that enrollment bubble. And then as that bubble moves through the grade ranges, you're able to continue to grab because we do have those 2 extra classrooms to help mitigate that problem. And also the same thing with kindergarten. Currently, I believe there are 2 kindergarten classrooms, but we are providing 3 in the new plan. So again, that provides additional capacity so that you don't get those overcrowded spaces that you currently have. And I also will say that was part of the redistricting study that was done. There were, again, mostly minor adjustments, but it was done with an eye to making sure that each of the schools' capacity matches what the building can support. So that will also help not only to eliminate sort of overcrowding issues at this school, but at all the schools. We're going to make subtle changes to deal with overcrowding throughout the district.
I have a question.
Sure, go ahead.
What is the proposed plan if it all goes well and the new school is set up at the Divine site? What is the town's plan? I'm not sure if there's anyone on the call from the town, but what is the plan with the Lyons school, the existing building, or what are they going to do with that?
Yeah, so there's nobody on the call who would speak definitively to that. I will say in the conversations with town council members, as they were weighing the 2 options, I think one of the factors that was in Divine's favor is that the Lyons property has a lot of assets and they felt like it could be used in a lot of different ways. Whereas the Divine property, for those of you who've been by recently, is the old Divine School. It's in terrible shape. It's kind of falling down. The town has been looking for ways to redevelop it or to sell it unsuccessfully. And so, this proposal takes that derelict property and puts it to a new and better use. Whereas, like I said, the Lyons property felt like it was a resource that they could find many different uses for it. They haven't decided what that use is, though, as far as I know.
Thank you.
Next question is, would current Lyons families be eligible to attend Divine, or would they be redistricted?
Generally speaking, most of the current Lyons students would remain in the new district. Not all, and the final redistricting plan is not complete. So it's a little bit fluid, but the intent is to largely keep the Lyons community intact to the extent that it's possible.
And that is our last question submitted to our Google form.
I just want to thank everyone for coming. I think that, you know, we're still in the early stages. And so there are questions that were asked, great questions, to which we're still trying to come up with answers, but we hear you loudly and clearly around traffic, walking, safety. So we'll be doing a lot of work around that. Redistricting, we're looking at that as well, but we are not trying to uproot. We are trying to keep, as Rendell said, as many students as possible, and possibly even grandfather in those who are there, so that people don't feel the transition being so difficult. So we're looking at all of that. I know that, you know, there are people who want the Lion site, as there are people who want the Divine site, but I would hope that everyone would see this as a huge success for Randolph as a community and as schools and as students. To have a building such as this in Randolph, I think it raises the bar, and it's not a building that actually does that, but it allows for so many creative opportunities. And what we do for the Lions, we would be trying to, you know, won't be as retrofitted per building, but we are trying to make sure that what the Lions students are getting, that everyone else is getting that, which is why the professional development for teachers and all of that is the same. And, you know, and that means we're going to have to look at our other buildings, but the Lions students are definitely going to have an experience, if the voters so choose, that would be mirroring quality learning environments that are around the country right now. So I'm looking forward to more conversations, and please keep sending your questions in.
Hi, my name's Kurt Onifray. I have 2 kids at the Lyons, and I actually had a question. I just couldn't find my mute button earlier. Can we pull up the slide with the plan on how things progressed? Yeah, I think it's slide 28. Thank you. So I see here that we have, back in early 2020, we've got the complete submit preliminary design as well as the MSBA review. Was there any part in there where this current families and the general populace was involved in the decision, or at least asked on this? I mean, there's a lot going on with the pandemic, and this may have flown over my radar. But again, it sounds like that if this does go up for a vote, and if it doesn't go through, there won't be a new school for the next 5 years. So it sounds like we're really pigeonholed into this. I feel like if we don't vote for this, well, then too bad, no school. Maybe there was an opportunity for the population to speak to this. I don't see this on here.
Christina,
And
I'm sorry, can you put up slide number 7?
yeah, I also came in a little late. So again,
So yeah, I think
thank
slide
you.
7 will help to describe the process. This is one of the earlier slides where you can see, you know, in May of 2020, there was a series of visioning sessions, and these were all public sessions within the town of Randolph. That other slide talks about the MSBA process and the state process moving forward. So this one that you see in front of you is really more about what the community involvement has been to date.
Yeah, just to add to what Tom said. So In September, when we presented to the town council, which again, that was a public meeting, we identified the sites that were under consideration at that time. And there was a robust conversation about the value of the different sites, in particular Divine and the current Lyons site. Then there was a community virtual presentation, much like what we have today, which was a morning and an afternoon session. Where again, we talked about, in particular, the Divine site and the Lyons site to gauge where the community was at that time. And then there were presentations to the school committee and town council and the building committee, again, where these were discussed. And then ultimately, at the December 14th meeting is where the town council made their decision based on information that they had received from the design team, the OPM, the educators, and presumably from their constituents as the legislative body. They decided that the Divine location made the most sense.
Okay, thank you. My other comment is, I mean, I know this meeting was very informative. I did learn a lot here, but again, I'm only seeing 23 individuals on the meeting. I know some of them are from TSKP, Daedalus, as well as the school council, and then I can see some fellow parents on here. And, we have the Lyons School has, I don't know, what, close to 300 students on it. That's a lot of parents, a lot of individuals that are not privy to this meeting, maybe because of work schedules or what have you. But is today and tomorrow, is that going to be enough time to convey this information to everybody? Not everybody has the opportunity to step out or work from home to be able to attend a meeting like this. I know we have one evening meeting. Is there the opportunity for more to get this information out to everybody? So again, everybody is fully informed on what this is.
So there will be another presentation this evening at 7 o'clock, and then all of this information will be up on the website, and the question the question or comment period will additionally be open for another 2 weeks. So, we really are hoping that it will give the entire Randolph community the opportunity to see the presentation. It's being streamed on YouTube live now. It'll be available for viewing on YouTube additionally. And again, we're keeping it open for the 2 weeks to get those questions and comments in so that we can have an informed decision and tweak the design to get the input that we really are asking for.
We are also going to take this recording and RCTV will play it and air it multiple times. It will be on the Randolph Public Schools website, and we will send something out to the mobile app to the community as we're asking the town to do so that people can see it there. So we're hoping to get it out as many ways as possible. And yes, there will be additional community meetings as the program design changes or we make it to the next module of the MSBA process.
All right, thank you very much.
Well, if there are no other questions, I'm going to say thank you very much for coming today. And we look forward to our continued work around building a new Lyons school. So thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.